On today's show, NBA All-Star Weekend, Friday night, the Rising Stars game, with a huge upset as Victor Wembanyama's team is beaten by the G Leaguers in the Rising Stars competition. Plus, what would a one-on-one tournament look like at NBA All-Star Weekend? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the very next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of having to connect your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen right there at your fingertips. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. But hey, maybe you want a little bit more space, right? The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room for up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Pelicans, Jake Madison, who you can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Pelicans. And Jake, NBA Rising Stars is always the event that kicks off NBA All-Star Weekend. We get a good look at a lot of the young talent around the NBA landscape. Now, what I don't think a lot of people were expecting was the team that had Victor Wembanyama to be eliminated in the first round by the G League team, no less. That was probably maybe the most surprising shock of All-Star Weekend, quite possibly.
Yeah, look, the G League Ignite even is like bad this year, right? Like there's like 6-31. There's talk of maybe they get rid of it and then they come out and beat like NBA players, right? So like that was actually kind of shocking, but I love the new format for the Rising Stars game. It's a lot of fun. You get to see some of the up and coming talent out there and shows you just like how good of a spot the league is in, I think.
And honestly, watching the team that ultimately went on to win it all, Team Jalen, they got off to a bit of a slow start too. Before Bennedict Mathurin, Jaden Ivey, they had a little bit of a kind of a back and forth, some words going back. It got a little chippy, chippier than I ever remember the Rising Stars game getting in previous years.
It's funny, right? Like I've gone to this a couple of times, actually. Like if you're ever in town for an All-Star weekend, like tickets to this are usually cheap and you can go and it's a lot of fun because players take it really seriously. Like they want to go at one another and kind of prove that they're better than these other folks, right? Like egos in the NBA are big and very much a real thing. So they take it way more seriously than like the actual All-Star game, which means I think you're just getting better basketball. And so it's a lot of fun. Like it maybe sets the seeds for like future rivalries, I think, right? You talk a little bit of trash during the Rising Stars game. You see each other in the postseason or towards the stretch run of the regular season. Those guys are going to have a little bit of an edge to them, and anything that makes the games more enjoyable to watch, I'm all for.
Absolutely. And, you know, these players, they don't become the best players in the world because they're, you know, jolly, happy, friendly. No, they've got a competitive edge to them, right? All these guys are inherent competitors. They want to go out there and win at the highest level. And that's exactly what this is. And I also really love the format of the target score. I think that adds so much juice to the environment to where, you know, if you were just playing and got, you know, running clock through 3-4 quarters of a basketball game, or even if they, you know, cut it down to like a half of basketball or something in the Rising Stars game, it's just not as fun as having that target score. And then as soon as one team starts to get a little too close to that target score, you see both teams kind of wake up and lock in like, oh, we got to really start playing basketball now.
What I love about that, especially in this format, right, is like you're always going to kind of have a dramatic moment. You're always going to have a game winner. You've got to hit a target score. It means they will guarantee, it might be a free throw, but there's guaranteed to be
the free throws tend to be a little anticlimactic, but still.
Yeah, a little bit. But there's always like a game winner, right? And now that player kind of gets to put that on their resume. It's not that they just scored the final basket and then time ran out and you don't think of it. Every shot's kind of heightened. You know, could they win it on this possession? Could they win it on the next one? Is it a three? 3? Is it a 2? What's it look like? It's a memorable moment. And I think that's kind of what you're looking for here when it comes to All-Star Weekend. You want these guys to kind of stand out. And I think that's what's so fun about this.
And speaking of the memorable moments, honestly, even though the G League team didn't go on to win it all, the way that Alondes Williams was straight up just attacking Victor Wembanyama, zero fear, like took it straight to his chest on one drive, finished over the top of him. The only three-pointer that he hit in that game, the 1 of 6 shooting that he had in the first meetup against Wemby and Team Pow, I apologize. It happened over Wemby. He shot and drained like a rainbow moonball 3 over Wembanyama. And I was sitting here thinking, man, Alondes Williams really saw Victor and was like, oh, I've got no fear. I'm going straight at this guy.
You love it, right? Like those are the moments we want, right? Like for him, that's like a big deal. There were more eyes on this than there ever would have been otherwise because of a guy like Victor Wembanyama and some of the other players out there. So this is exactly what you're looking for. Look, All-Star Weekend's lacking a little bit of juice, right? You've got to kind of pump it up and build it up wherever you can get it. Or I don't know, maybe add some things into it here. And like, that's what you got to do. So anything you get like that, I think helps the sort of weekend.
Speaking of adding things into it, after the Rising Stars game concluded, the OKC duo, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, they were at the podium being asked questions about All-Star Weekend, what the experience is like and everything. And Chet Holmgren was, when they were specifically asked about anything that they would change about All-Star Weekend. And Chet Holmgren, you know, being the jokester that he is, said that they should change the dunk contest to be the 4 highest verticals in the NBA so that he would be safe and not have to participate. Jake, I don't even know who the 4 highest verticals would be in the NBA off the top of my head right now. Like, I mean,
I got no idea. I'm trying to think.
I'm trying to think if we could cobble together like what would be the dunk contest in this. I mean, Jalen Green might be in there as far as just a straight leaper.
Yeah, I'm still not going to watch it if you're just taking it off of that, right? Like that's kind of the problem here. That's not actually doing what we want it to be here. Cool, they jump high, like that's great.
Maybe that's not quite as a productive suggestion here, but his teammate Jalen Williams actually did have what I thought was a really interesting idea, and that is adding a one-on-one tournament to All-Star Weekend. Could you imagine that on like All-Star Saturday, or maybe you spice it up, maybe you put the one-on-one tournament like on like Friday evening before the Rising Stars game or right after it or something, kind of space out the fun activities from All-Star Weekend. But I mean, a one-on-one tournament of some of the NBA's best players, if you could get some of the actual like upper echelon type stars to come out and just have a fun little one-on-one tournament, put some charity in there, you know, have the donations go to a charity that the NBA picks, something like that. I think that could have a lot of juice behind it.
It could. I would watch that. I'd watch that with any players out there. And again, I do think NBA All-Star Weekend is kind of lacking in a sense because you need that star talent out there. Even if you don't get the star players, right? Like there's so much bragging rights on the line for this. If you make there be a strong financial incentive, I think you can get some big name players to get in there. And look, we just talked about it, right? Like these guys have egos. They want to prove they're better than others, right? Like, can you see Anthony Edwards trying to like murder everybody in a one-on-one tournament to prove that he's the best? Like those kind of guys that are just hyper competitive. And even if no one really jumps into it in the first year, someone's going to win that and essentially get the belt, right? The top one-on-one guy in the NBA. And that's going to make other players want to get in there. I love this idea, right? I would do this with as many people as you could. I think you could get top names in there eventually. I think they'd all be a little bit scared, right? Sometimes those egos are fragile. It's why we don't see guys in the dunk contest because they're scared of losing it and what it does to the brand and all of that. But you'd see some real good action there. They would play defense in this. It would be a lot of fun, I think.
And I mean, at the end of the day, right, being able to have that bragging right to lord amongst your peers for the next, year until the next one rolls around, that would be a ton of fun. But maybe, look, All-Star Weekend, it needs some facelifting. It needs some improvements. It needs some extra pizzazz, some additions. They've made some tweaks here and there, and it has been some, a lot more fun. We had the Sabrina versus Steph in this most recent one. That was a cool, hopefully not a one-off experience, but definitely something to hopefully build more of and continue to kind of add some excitement to All-Star Weekend. But for your own analysis and breakdown and thoughts on what took place at All-Star Weekend, as well as everything to do with the New Orleans Pelicans, you'll have us covered over at Locked On Pels. Jake, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, man.